You're listening to Well Met,
a
Hearthstone podcast brought to you by BlizzPro.com.
Well met.
Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Well Met Podcast. We are a Hearthstone podcast brought to you by BlizzPro.com. I am John Horstman, centered out of Denver, Colorado, and we've got the crew with us. First, from Saskatoon, Canada, it is Kevin Hovdestad. Kevin, welcome to the show, man.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's been a nutty week. Looking forward to talking about some very cool new things tonight. If I'd been thinking ahead, if I'd been smarter, I actually probably would have arranged to have somebody come hassle you today because my mom is in Denver, Colorado right now.
I want to meet Kevin's mom.
She's down there for a conference, but they couldn't fly in. They were supposed to fly in yesterday and they couldn't because of the snowstorm.
Snow. Yeah, it's been awful. I've been at home the last 2 days.
I believe it. Yeah, I saw the pictures.
So, yeah. Well, Kevin's mom, wherever you are, I'm coming to find you.
So many jokes here.
Let's not. Let's definitely not.
From Kansas City, everybody's favorite, JR Cook. Hey, JR.
Hey, John. How's it going there in Denver, man, with all the snow that I am glad we didn't get here in Kansas City?
Yep. It's wet and people are crabby. It's the worst. I went
outside in like t-shirt, shorts today and all that, and it's been pretty nice.
Nice.
Yeah, nice weather here in Kansas City.
Well, without further ado, let's talk about our week in Hearthstone. I'm going to go first this week. I'm going to go ahead and switch it up. I'm not going to ask you guys. I had a pretty good week. Jumped up to rank 6, fell back to rank 7 last night. But been up to rank 6 and haven't really gotten a lot of time to play, so that's been kind of good. Running Zulok, little bit of Secret Paladin when I'm not too, coherent for reasons, and then also ran a little bit of mid-range Druid, but overall, pretty good week. What about you, Kev?
Not a whole ton, honestly. I'm in the process of moving into my new place. I got keys on Thursday, and I'm hoping to be totally done, actually, by basically this time tomorrow. Internet hooked up, furniture delivered, everything moved in, which is awesome because the new place is seriously, it's going to be the nicest place I've ever lived by a huge margin. Those of you who are watching the video or joining us live, you can see a bunch of my stuff behind me is gone because the only thing in this building is the desk that I am recording this show at. So, but yeah, I played up to rank 8 and I've done that pretty much exclusively using Tempo Mage as well as occasionally when I feel like losing for a little while, I flip back to my mid-range Shaman because I think 35 wins away from Gold Shaman.
So
which will
close.
Well, you just kind of have to, right? And I'm going to have 6 gold classes when I get it with Shaman and all of the other classes within less than 200 games. So I'm going to try and go for all 9 golds, I think, over the summer is my goal.
Nice. You're almost there, man. You'll get there. I believe it. JR, what about you? How was your week in Hearthstone?
And I'm still it's April. Still waiting for the new expansion to hit, man. It's tough for me to get into it right now. So I've been playing a little bit. I've still been playing that Hobgoblin Zoo deck. I still really enjoy playing that.
Yes.
It does pretty good for itself. I'm definitely not like taking rank seriously at all this month, but I did get a new iPad Pro yesterday and been playing a little bit on that. And I'm telling you, Hearthstone runs pretty darn good on that thing.
Yeah, dude. So, it looks amazing.
Yeah. So I have enjoyed playing with that a little bit.
One of my coworkers has the 12.9-inch one and the Apple Pencil. He doesn't draw. He doesn't take notes. He uses it for Hearthstone. No joke, because then you don't have the fingerprints when you're dragging all your cards. I'm like, that's actually a really brilliant $100 solution for a
For
very
fingerprints.
first world problem. Yeah.
I'm
Yeah,
sure
I
I
mean-
saw like a meme photo at one point right after they made it so that you could play Hearthstone on iOS, and it was a photograph of the average Hearthstone player's iPad, and all you could see was just the finger streaks from each minion onto that same sort of midpoint on the board. So it's just like a triangle of like grind.
Yeah, straight
right
to
where-
face.
right to face.
It was,
yeah.
yes. I have a picture of that too somewhere on my iPad. So
Now I got the Apple Pencil as well, and I haven't used it to play Hearthstone once because I never even thought about it. I've been using it to draw, but now definitely playing that with Hearthstone from now on. That's what I'm gonna do
nice.
for sure.
All right, before we jump into the news, we do want to thank our friends of the show, Sean G, Martin Z, and Albert T. Thank you guys so much for all your support for the show. If you want to know more, head over to patreon.com/wellmedpodcast and figure it out. All right, guys, news.
This week in Hearthstone, Heroes of Warcraft.
Well, boys, Christmas came early in the form of an iOS treat and a new hero in the world of Hearthstone. Kev, you want to break it down for us?
Yeah, this is actually super cool in my opinion. We've been talking about the expectation of new heroes coming to Hearthstone for the last little while. We did just see Lady Liadrin not too long ago as a World of Warcraft cross promotion. Now we actually got an Apple-based promotion. So right now, across all of iOS, the Apple ecosystem has this thing going on called Apps for Earth. It's exclusive to iOS. They're doing a promotion where people can buy either apps or in-app purchases, and all of the funds are going to the World Wildlife Fund. So Hearthstone, from Blizzard in conjunction with Apple, is doing this on Hearthstone specifically for a brand new mage hero, which I think was actually a huge shock to most people, that we saw a class that already has an alternate skin get yet another alternate skin. And thus we ended up with Khadgar, who is one of the famous mages. He's Medivh's apprentice. He's sort of a central figure in World of Warcraft at present. Very cool character. I'm very excited that we're continuing to see the alternate skins because the game doesn't lack for cosmetics in any way between golden cards and card backs, but there haven't been a lot of ways to show additional support. There haven't been any of these types of promotions where we can support charities, which Blizzard has traditionally done in their other games. So I think this is a really nice fit that we get this on the Hearthstone side of things. It is unfortunate in some ways that it's iOS exclusive, but that's because it's an Apple promotion at its core, not a Blizzard promotion. JR, thoughts? What did I miss?
No, you pretty much nailed on the head. The only thing, like, it's hard for me to get upset about cosmetic items in general. It's because you don't need to have them to play the game, right? So, some people are complaining that, yeah, it's iOS only. Some people complain that we have another mage alternate hero, but we don't have alternate heroes for a lot of other heroes yet, right? For me, it's like, it's cool. It's $4.99. It goes to a good cause. I don't care one way or the other. I think it's cool.
Yeah, I mean, so we've had a Samsung exclusive with the Galaxy Gifts card back. And out of principle, I didn't emulate anything. I won't have that card back ever, just because I knew that if they had an Apple card back, then I can't say like, well, it's Apple exclusive, you should have Apple ones, because there's other ways to get the Samsung one. So out of principle, I didn't get the Samsung card back. So I get that. It also makes sense that it's a third mage hero, as weird as it sounded at first, but imagine the outrage if there was an iOS exclusive, like second Warlock hero, right?
Absolutely,
And the only way you
yep.
could do it, like, it would blow up on the forums. This way it's like, well, it's iOS exclusive. It doesn't have a card back. It's for a limited time. It's cool, but it's definitely, I would say, out of the other 4 alternate heroes that we have now, I would say it's definitely the least exciting. And overall, like, I think they did a really good job of tempering, no matter what, people are going to get upset. And I think they did a really good job at making it so it's something special and you want, but at the same time, there's not a lot of people losing sleep over it. And almost everyone has friends with an iPhone, iPad, iPod Touch, that you can just log right into on your own account, make the purchase, and be done. So
now, my question for you guys, because we haven't touched this yet, but you did sort of, skirt it, John, is that the announcement of Khadgar did indicate that this was a time-limited promotion. Do we believe, honestly, that Blizzard is going to retire Khadgar outright at the end of the promotional period here?
I think one of the things that they're going to do is they're going to make it available on all devices at the end of this promotion, and likely still have it of like money they make off of it would likely still go to charity, the same charity, in my opinion. Since it's just an Apple promotion, they can't just outright say that right now. But I think when it ends, I would be surprised if you don't see it on all the other devices and also for charity after the fact.
I disagree. I think it will stay iOS exclusive. I think it will go away. And I think that Blizzard is going to just continue to commit to bringing more and more great heroes, just like card backs, right? You can't get that Samsung Galaxy Gifts card back. Can you still get that one?
Yes.
Maybe you can. Okay. But well then maybe not. I guess there really isn't a precedent for a time sensitive. Well, you had to pre-order League of Explorers, right? So you couldn't get the card back if you didn't pre-order League of Explorers.
Any pre-orders, your monthly card back that you get for playing in a season.
I think it'll go away. Maybe they bring it back for like a limited time weekend again or something like that. But the whole point of making it iOS exclusive isn't to make everyone scramble to get it by April 24th, and then a week later be like, now everyone can get it. I'll just be like, screw you, Blizzard. You're the worst.
See, I actually think that JR probably has a point in that keeping it ecosystem exclusive doesn't make a lot of sense, given that they've spent the time and the money on art assets, voiceover work, etc. With a simple card back, maybe that made sense, and I feel like that may have actually been an advertising vector. I think there was probably some cross promotion there where Samsung negotiated a deal to do that to get some additional eyeballs on their new phones. But in this case, there's really nothing to that effect, and every different cosmetic in the game sort of has its own different system, right? So traditionally, like, you can buy card packs or the various adventure modes, and those are all sort of a self-contained thing that are always available until now with the retirement of Curse of Nax Ramus. That's tied to formats, maybe a different conversation. With card backs, it's always been the monthly ones are monthly only, but Blizzard has been saying in every interview they've done for the last year that they're evaluating the possibility of having ways in the future for people to acquire card backs that they may have missed. So some of the specific promotional ones, like the BlizzCon ones, stuff like that, will stay exclusive. But they've always given people a way to go back and revisit old stuff in all of their games. Hearthstone, I don't think, will be the first exception to that rule. So in this case, I actually think what'll probably happen is after the promotional period, it'll be on all the devices, like JR said, but it'll actually go back up to the regular hero price, would be my guess. Because I don't think they're going to have. Well, I don't think they're going to have one at a lower price point. I think the price point is established, and they're going to continue to add new ones that have no price associated with them, the way they did with Liadrin. But they probably aren't going to leave Khadgar as the only one at a discounted price point, because it was done at that price point as a charity drive, and that would be consistent with how they've done charity drives for things like discounted non-combat pets in World of Warcraft.
All right, I have a question because I'm honestly blanking. Does Lady Liadrin have a card back?
She does not.
No, she does not. And they charged. They didn't charge anything for her though, either. So the ones that they've charged for have had a card back. That's has been true. $5.
That's true.
And you don't have a card back. I really believe that there's. Okay, I don't think there's point. Really any incentive. I think there will be a catch up, not really a catch up mechanic, but a way to get some of these card backs and things that we've missed. But I don't think they're going to do it so soon. I think what we're really disagreeing on is timetable, not really if, but when.
Sure.
And to like what extent do they have to buy it? Can you like trade something in? Do you have to do something? I don't know. It's interesting. I have to think about it a bit more. But I think that $5 for a hero without a card back, which, let's be honest, only 1/9 out of the time are you playing that specific hero, where that card back you can have it at any time. I think that makes sense. I wouldn't say that that's inconsistent.
Sure. Yeah, I think that's fair. I think we're on the same page there. And I am going to just say, frankly, I'm glad they're continuing to do it. I'm glad there are new and different cosmetics coming to the game. Alternate heroes are a cool, simple, easy way between your card back, your deck, and your character. You can do a lot to distinguish yourself, even when you're playing something that's maybe not interesting. Like if you and I both sit down, John, and we're going to play a game of Hearthstone, there's a good chance that even if we're working from the same deck lists, we're going to be running different card backs, different characters. You're going to get a different flavor when you play every time.
Yeah, it's true. Although I'm down to one card back that I'm using for everything for the future, which at the end of the show we may or may not. Just kidding. We are giving away. I almost said may not, and I'm like, that's not even true.
Yeah, don't do that. Don't do that.
So we are giving away a Tespa card back at the end of the show, so that'll be really fun.
The live show, for those of you
the live show, not at the end of the audio podcast. Sorry, audio listeners. I've been in the same boat as you too many times for that one. But we tweeted it out on Twitter like all freaking week and announced it last week.
Yeah.
So I only feel a little bad. JR, we got a live stream coming up, I think. Why don't you tell us about it?
Yeah, so this upcoming Thursday, April 21st at 10 a.m. Pacific time, we will have a Old Gods live stream with Ben Brode and Frodan, otherwise known as Brodan. Right?
Yep. I love that.
So there's not a lot that is really said about this other than it's Ben Brode, Frodan. They're going to show some games with the Old Gods. But my feeling is they're likely going to show the rest of the cards that aren't revealed yet, which is around 60, I want to say 64 cards or something like that right now, 64. As of this point, that aren't revealed. We'll likely have more revealed before Thursday, so it's going to probably be around 55 or so cards, I'm guessing. And then we'll likely hear exactly when we're going to see Old Gods get released.
Well,
finally.
Unless something has changed, I think we're all pretty clear on that April 26th, Tuesday, April 26th date, because that's been pretty heavily published everywhere. And it would line up. I have
a theory about that, though.
Okay, well, we'll come back to you in 2 seconds. But I think it would line up that they're going to do the big reveal stream on Thursday, hopefully talk through what everybody's been waiting for the whole time anyway, which is the classic card nerfs. And then we would get the big Facebook dump, Friday or Monday, and the expansion sometime at the patch window whenever that occurs in the last week of April. And that would be a pretty clean fit for almost everything. It means, unfortunately, that everybody sort of vying for top legend rank has to do it in the crazy kerfluffle that is the first couple days of a new expansion. But it would mean a clean break where everybody has got everything kind of set and in place for the May season, for the spring preliminary. Like, I think it's the perfect break point for it to drop in that last week of April.
I agree. I just think that's what it is. I always love for rumors to be wrong, but I think this one's spot on. JR, what's your theory?
So I think we're going to see Old Gods cards hit April 26th in Arena. But I don't think we're going to get Old Gods cards in Constructed until May 1st.
Okay.
And the reason for that will just be they'll probably wait until the end of the month and then at the beginning of the next month roll out Standard. Just so it doesn't really mess with the end of this month's Legendary climb.
That's possible. Yeah. I mean, and they've done that in the past with a couple of the other expansions. I wouldn't rule that out.
Yeah. And I think the reason for that is because they've been very late April, early May is when it's going to release. And that hits late April and early May, where we're going to see cards in Arena and then finally get to open our packs early May.
Didn't they say, though, that like Cthulhu can't be played in Arena? Right? You can't draft Cthulhu. So that might be kind of a bummer to launch it in Arena and 17 of your cards just are worthless or can't be played.
I mean,
But-
no,
you already
no.
have that in arena. You're already
Yeah.
going to have that in arena either way, right?
When they do it in arena, all they do is they make it so that when you open up a new draft, you get access to the old gods cards, which will exclude Cthulhu and the Cthulhu related cards. You're not going to get to open your packs until the following
Right.
week. When the
No.
expansion's actually
Yeah,
live,
no,
right?
not opening packs. If I said that, I misspoke. I didn't mean opening packs. I just meant playing an arena and having that be the first experience
First
with old
taste.
gods.
But
And
that's okay.
it
Everybody's going to get Cthulhu the following week, anyways. In that case, right?
I know,
'Cause
it just-
everyone gets Cthulhu.
seems sloppy. I don't know. All right. Well, let's go. I don't really know. So we hit April 24th, 10 a.m. Pacific Daylight Time, twitch.tv/play Hearthstone, Ben Broden, Frodan. We hit them all. So I think it's card review time, boys. Everybody's favorite. They all love our card reviews, and we all agree with everybody else on them. It's our favorite part of the year. Let's talk about some new cards. All right. Here we go. Kevin, do us the honors, please.
All right, we're starting from the top here with a card that I think is going to be divisive. We're going to have a good conversation about this one. The first card we're talking about is Embrace the Shadow. This is a 2-mana epic priest spell that reads, this turn, your healing effects deal damage instead. I think this is a phenomenal opportunity for late game priest to have the ability to convert healing into damage without having to run the risk of having an Akanai Soul Priest body left behind on the board, such that you might be put in a position where if you're trying to recover going into fatigue or stabilize, if someone pulls off a combo, you have to find a way to get rid of that Soul Priest and often don't have a body to trade it into that can deal with its 5 health. So I don't know that it's going to be the kind of card you run 2 of. And frankly, I think that's been consistent in a lot of the cards we've reviewed. There's been a lot of epic spells in this set where you would never justify running a second copy of them. It really, in a way, feels like maybe they're trying to push the needle a little bit again towards people not running 2 of 15 cards in their decks. They want more variety. They want you to take a couple of one-ofs that fulfill a very specific purpose towards either a win condition or early game or late game strategy, but not just run a super core set of cards all the time. So I think it's gonna see play. I don't think it's objectively good because you pay 2 mana for nothing. It has no impact. It does nothing on the board. It will only ever be used as part of a combo, and it would have to be used in tandem with some big heals or after a Justicar. You would never use it in the early game because it would be woefully inefficient to pay 4 mana to deal 2 damage with your Embrace the Dark or Embrace the Shadow and a hero power. So it's a late game combo card, a 1 of at best. Might see play in some very specific control fatigue decks. That's my feel. JR?
I think a lot of people have been calling this like card a replacement for Akanai Soul Priest. But I don't really see anybody cutting Akanai Soul Priest from their decks. I mean, it's a 3/5 minion for 4 that has the same effect as this card. I think people want to run 2 more Akanai Soul Priests, so you get 4. I see this getting played along with Soul Priest. So any deck that's playing Soul Priest, I see them including 2 of these as well instead of just 1. It gives you a lot more flexibility, such as being able to do the whole circle of healing early if you really need to, or saving it late without having, like you said, without having the awkward 3/1 sitting on your board that can really mess up your healing game. But I can see this getting used a lot in not only control priests that will likely decide to run more healing spells, but also something like it. I think it will make Shadow Priest more viable as well. I think it would really fit well in a Shadow Priest style of deck.
Okay, I have a question. This works with healing spells, right? Like Flash Heal?
Yeah,
Yes.
It's all healing effects.
Okay, I thought so, but chat is making me freak out. So, okay. So, in my opinion, I see this. Kevin, I agree with you on some things and disagree on, I think, one thing. I do think that if this card is going to be played, it's going to be played for some sort of combo base things. Like, imagine getting a Thorson tick on this and Flash Heals, and all of a sudden you do, what is that, 20 damage on one turn. So there's lots of different things and combos that you can do with this. So I see this as trying to activate a combo. It also is nice because one of the hard parts about Priest is after your minions are gone, you're basically stuck with crap. And this is a way to convert crap, convert manure into a fertilizer, if you will. And so, I don't know. I definitely do think it could see play. I think that you design around this card quite a bit. Like, this is something that you don't just throw in like a Cabal Shadow Priest. Like, that's always going to be in virtually any priest deck that you play. Whereas Embrace the Shadow isn't, unless you're playing around. And I think it's really going to be a combo based card. So
the thing to keep in mind, right, is that Priest has always had the ability to do crazy combos. It's just never been efficient to do so because Priest doesn't have that sort of good blend of, minions that can test the board and survivability. Like when you play a control deck right now, like a Freeze Mage or a Control Warrior, you get armor, you get some sort of security that you're not going to die, you get big, messy, easy board clears. With Priest, it's always been you have to manipulate the board without necessarily clearing it. You need to take advantage of like specific breakpoints on attack on your opponent's minions. And so the combos were always like, yeah, you can get away with pulling off a Akanai Soul Priest into Velen double flash heal, or you could do the Velen Mind Blast or the Malagos Mind Blast combos. There was lots of ways to do it, but it always meant running cards that were totally dead, right? Mind Blast is probably the worst top deck imaginable as a priest because it just does nothing for you to stabilize. So it's designed to be a late game card, but it can't do anything for you until you've survived past everything else. So you just never want to see it. You want it to be the 28th card in your deck or whatever. This gives you the ability to run all of the cards that you would run either way, all of the effects that you would run either way, to stabilize against aggro. And if you survive, because you're actually playing against a mid-range or a control deck, flip around and convert those cards into damage. Because honestly, if you're playing like a fatigue type style, or you're playing against another combo deck, if you were playing Priest right now against something like mid-range Druid, half the time you're going to need those heals desperately to recover from combo. Half the time you're sitting there on turn 14 going, okay, my opponent hasn't killed me, but I have no way to kill him because I'm never actually able to create any reach. Priest is a class that has never had reach. And I think this is an easy way to just turn all of your other stabilizing cards into a swing turn and have that reach and be able to close some games out. It's not, like, on its face, it's not good. It has to be a combo. It has to be something that's, played towards in the late game, but it has potential.
Mm-hmm. And I definitely do think too, it reminds me a bit of like Druid combo, because I think what you just said still applies, right? You don't want Savage Roar, really, but there are ways that you can use it, manipulate it, even if you draw it early to clear off some early board aggression, things like that. Same thing with Force of Nature. We've all used Force of Nature to clear Sylvanas. And so, there's definite, uses for it, but ultimately you're playing around a specific condition or combo with that one, I really think. Let's talk about Thistle Tea. It's a new rare rogue spell, correct? That's rogue. Yeah.
Yes.
I've got it on my tiny little monitor. So it's a 6 mana spell, reads draw a card, add 2 extra copies of it to your hand. Am I wrong for hating this card? Am I wrong? Like, am I legitimately bad here? But I feel like what I'm doing is I'm drawing a card completely at random. Now, Rogue has some cards where basically there is some versatility there, but essentially you draw 2 copies, and then each of those copies essentially costs 2 more mana apiece because you spent 6 mana to get 3 versions of that card. I just don't like that. I can't think of a rogue or a rogue deck or archetype where this would be consistent enough to really, close out games and do well. Even in like a mill or something like that, it just feels risky. I feel like I'd just rather have sprint and draw out my cards and cycle them out faster. Boys, what did I miss?
Not much really. My main problem with this card is kind of in Rogue. It's one of the same reasons I talked about last week why I didn't like Blood Warriors and Patron Warrior. Drawing a card's great for those kind of decked Rogue and Patron Warrior, but copying a bunch of the same cards isn't particularly great. At least with Blood Warriors, you get to pick what cards you're going to get back in your hand. Well, this is completely random, and like you said, I would 100% rather play Sprint for 1 more mana than this, by far.
Yeah, I think Blood Warriors has the advantage, right? Like you said, that you can control what you get back, and there are very specific applications where you can totally get back like patrons or Grom or extra armor smiths or something that's going to allow you to sustain, extend, rebuild your board after you get pressured. Like there's definitely applications for that card because there are very specific ways that you can combo and control the combo. The problem with Thistletea is, and I'm going to qualify my statement here, right now it's awful because you have no ability to control what you're going to get from it. Having said that, I don't think, like looking at what Blizzard is doing with new card tech and some of the things they're doing differently with new cards, and we'll maybe talk about this more later with some of the new mechanics they've introduced, even just this week, I don't think it's out of the question that later in this set, or potentially in another set that's going to come this year or even next year, while Thistletea is still in Standard, that we'll see a card introduced in the game where it's like a something like tracking, right? Look at the next 3 cards in your deck,
or discover.
Choose one that goes back to the top of your deck. And if you had control over what was on the top of your deck and could choose what you were going to use Thistletea on, that would be a really scary proposition because now there are a ton of cards. There's a ton of cards where their power level is balanced against the fact that you can never have more than 2 of them. Imagine if you could Thistletea in Standard onto something that would allow you to build an OTK, right? If something like Oil still existed, you could Thistletea Oil, get a Tick of Thorson, and have a 3 Oil into Blade Flurry combo. That's lethal. That's the game, right? So there's definitely things where I see the potential, but until we have control over it, it's the type of random that is going to make for a couple of really hilarious YouTube clips and otherwise is not likely to be playable because it's way too slow.
And that's something that Hearthstone really misses, is any way to really change your deck around or be able to be in control of cards, being able to manipulate your deck on what card you're going to draw next, what's going to go on the top of your deck, what's going to go on the bottom of your deck, or anything like that. Hearthstone doesn't have any cards that actually do that today. And I've been talking about that since Classic. That's something this game really needs. And we haven't seen it yet.
Imagine if this card worked on the last card you had played, right? Because the concept, right? Thistletea back in old school original World of Warcraft was basically something that a rogue could use to replenish some of their resource. So classically, if you were going to try to one-to-one comparison it, Thistletea should be something that says it should be Innervate is what it should be. But they're going a totally different direction with it. I would love for this card to read at 4 mana, create 2 copies of the last card you played. Then all of a sudden you're talking about a totally different set of interactions that you have complete control over.
It's like reverse duplicate.
Exactly.
Or what is it? There already is. That's Echo of Medivh. Basically,
Echo's rotating,
it's really close. Right?
It's kind of a Blood Warriors-y effect. It's kind of answer me this question. Would you play this over Burgle? Burgle's bad too, don't get me wrong. But would you play this over Burgle? Like to generate 2 cards for 3 mana, right?
I don't know what that does.
It's 2 random class cards from your opponent's class for 3 mana. So if all you're doing is trying to put cards in your hand, why would you play Thistletea over Burgle? They're both
because
random.
Of the card art.
Oh, okay, gotcha. I haven't seen the gold version. Maybe it's really pretty.
True, could be. Could go on my all gold oil rogue. All right, JR, take us through Forlorn Stalker.
So Forlorn Stalker is a 3 mana minion, 4 attack, 2 power, hunter, rare with battle cry. Give all minions with death rattle in your hand +1/+1.
Death
John-
Rattle Hunter is back, baby.
Death Rattle Hunter is
Just
back.
in time for all the good Death Rattle cards to be gone. But
Yep.
I feel like this is potentially for future sets, maybe not for this set. I think it's fine. Statted fine, strong battle cry. There's definitely room to work around it. I don't know if there's enough Death Rattle cards right now to make it consistent enough to want to play it all over the already stacked, 3-drop of Hunter with Eaglehorn Bow and Animal Companion and some of their spells and things like that. I don't know if it's quite there. Unleash the Hounds. I don't know if it's quite there yet. I think as new Death Rattle cards keep getting introduced, I do think that this could be a great way and very dangerous in hybrid and mid-range Druid. So I just don't like right now.
I think they're pushing, and for a card that we're going to talk about here a little bit later, I think they're starting to push for Hunter to kind of be that Death Rattle deck and really pushing for that because with this and the other card the Hunter Legendary we're going to talk about here in a bit, I think we're going to see within the Year of the Kraken, we're going to see more Death Rattle cards that Hunter is going to want to use. And as they introduce more into Standard, this card's going to end up being a lot better. Now, whether, like you said, it's going to do well on competing against Animal Companion or Unleash the Hounds or any other 3-cost good Hunter card, will yet to be seen. Like, there has to be a lot of really good Death Rattle cards to make this really good.
Kev, bring us out.
I don't see it happening. Sorry. I look at the Death Rattle cards and think of the stuff that's left that you might play as a Hunter. There's way too little for this to be a really good, viable choice. You would basically right now be banking on hitting Huge Toad. There's just so little. There's so little that it would apply to. There's lots of cool combo possibilities. Yeah, maybe you throw this down when you've got Bran out and you've got High Main in hand, and all of a sudden you got something that's crazy. But realistically, if it didn't say in your hand, if this buffed the stuff that was on the board, sure, I think you would play it. But for in your hand, I think it's way too conditional. I think you have to sit there, build up a big hand, which is the opposite of what Hunter does traditionally, right? Hunter is a class that looks to empty its hand pretty aggressively. And you already talked about it, but when you look at the 3-cost Hunter options, there's so much, and there's so much good synergy already. Stable Master synergy with beasts, Eaglehorn synergy with traps, even new cards. Think about this versus Infest and what you could do with Infest as a relative comparison. I think there's just enough other things that you can do on 3. Plus, bear in mind that in a meta where we're hoping to see some changes to removal, I think you're going to have to see the comeback of Deadly Shot, for example. So I think every class has a mana cost where they're super heavy. Paladin is 4, Priest is 6, Hunter is 3. Hunter struggles to pick a 3-drop and focus on a specific playstyle on 3. It's one of the most important turns in the deck. I don't think this is competitive enough to justify a spot over the alternatives. And especially, again, even same cost, same stat line. Nobody played Stable Master. You could put a 4-2 for 3 on the board, make a Beast immune, which would allow it to trade into something for free, just like it had Divine Shield. No one played it. I've never seen that card dropped. I don't even know what sound it makes when it enters play. I think 4-2 for 3 has never been a playable stat line, and the only minion that's ever been played with that stat line is Big Game Hunter.
Cult Master
is 4 and has a totally different effect.
I thought you were just talking about the stat line, not the cost.
No, cost as well.
Okay, got it. I mean, and again, I right now I totally agree with you, but I have to think that Blizzard has a plan for Death Rattle in some way, shape, or form. I don't think we're going to see it, bring out new minions in Death Rattles, but to do something to augment your board or buff Cthulhu or whatever things they introduce. I'm hopeful that down the road that this becomes playable as a good buff card. You're totally right, though. Just like Piloted Shredder, if it didn't come out with another card, like a 4/3 stat line for 4 is awful because it dies to some 1-drops almost every 2-drop. and almost all 3-drops. The only reason why it's played is because, well, then you get another really, most of the time, really decent minion. So I'm definitely there, but I'm hopeful. I really am hopeful, and I do think that if there are enough Death Rattle cards introduced in the future, that there could be some people who really do experiment around this and try to make it happen.
I will say I think there's cause to hope that they'll introduce some cool Death Rattle, particularly because so much is rotating out. But what got introduced for, and like a Hunter could get some Hunter specific stuff, but what got introduced for neutral Death Rattle since GVG? I'll give you a hint.
I hate this Jeopardy thing you try to do. You know
sorry,
the answer,
I'm just
Kev.
saying.
Yeah, he
Just
has
say
it up
the
on his screen and
freaking
he
card.
has-
Damn.
There's only two. This is a known thing, okay? It's Major Domo and Chilma. Those are the neutral Death Rattle cards that have been introduced.
Both amazing.
I mean,
I'm not
prior to
saying
League of Explorers. I don't remember what all came out in League of Explorers. I guess there's like wobbling runts and stuff, but they haven't introduced competitive playable Death Rattle minions. They're not doing it. I don't know. It's certainly not as neutrals, so it would have to be more Hunter class cards. And we're getting pretty close to hitting the limit of the number of new Hunter class cards that are getting introduced.
Yeah. I don't think it's happening this expansion by any means.
Sure.
And
Okay.
And it could just be a card that ends up just being good, potentially being good and wild.
Right. And that's
Built
totally
something.
fine. If that's what it's for, then awesome. It could be awesome there. I don't think it's like an arena card. It must be a wild card if it's anything. Yeah.
All right, let's go on to the next batch of cards here. We're going through these way too slowly. We're going to speed it up. Twilight Flamecaller, 3 mana mage, minion 2 attack, 2 health, reads Battlecry, deal 1 damage to all enemy minions. Pretty good. Pretty good. I mean, I think in aggro, I think this could be, or in an aggro meta, this could be pretty strong. One kind of stinks, but you really want to play it early in the game and then never see it again. I don't know. I think it's fine. I don't feel especially excited about this card, or I don't feel like it's going to be a build around card, but I think you can make some good arguments for this card being seen, especially if we see faster metas start to come back again. What do you think, JR?
I'm not like terribly excited about this card in a constructed format in standard or wild. I mean, it does have almost the same effect as Ravaging Ghoul for Warriors, and we were really high up on that card. But the reason for that card is way better than this one is because better stat line, and also Warriors have synergy with damaging their own minions. And this card just doesn't have a lot of synergy in general with a mage at all. It's basically just an arcane explosion, which doesn't see play today, and so you're getting that for free. And I don't know, it could find its way into mage decks if tokens become a thing. Like if that is a very popular deck type in the meta and tokens become a thing, this is definitely a card that you can sub into like a tempo mage or something like that.
Yeah, that's what I was
to try to
thinking,
get
tempo
done with like
mage.
any kind of early aggression with a token deck. But other than that, I don't really see it getting played in constructed as all. However, since it is a common, it's actually a really good card for arena, and I think that's where this card's really going to shine.
That's fair. Kev?
I think you guys hit all the high notes. If I was super worried about having a way right now to deal 1 damage on turn 3, I would probably, instead of this, play Sorcerer's Apprentice into Arcane Explosion. But we don't know how prevalent token decks are going to be. Today now, if this card was available, I think you'd see it all over the place because it would be a same turn counter to Muster, and that would have been a huge swing turn. That would have been a massive thing. Yeah, an implosion, absolutely. But like same turn for Muster, an available counter to hang on to for implosion. Like, yeah, I think there'd be value in that, but I don't know. I don't see, outside of arena, because JR's right, arena is probably where this card is going to shine. I don't see anything right now that suggests that people are going to play it. It's cool and it's a neat concept, but it's a weird fit, and I don't know maybe we don't know enough about what the future mage archetypes will look like yet, but in what we know right now, as far as tempo styles, freeze styles, mech, whatever, all the things we've seen so far, like there's nothing that suggests that there's an obvious way to make this fit, and certainly not as an on curve play, because odds are you're playing this into something like we've seen so many like 4-3 for 3, 3-4 for 3. There's so many things that would just survive it or trade into it with no issue. I don't know. I have I'm cautiously pessimistic. Is that
No, I mean, God, but we've been thinking about, starting to think about aggro shaman. Now, aggro shaman isn't seeing a lot of change except for crackle going away when standard hits. And I'm thinking about all the time where I'm putting a good body on the board, but I'm not doing anything to affect my opponent's board. And it feels clunky and awful. And usually I get out tempoed. He makes a couple favorable trades and I'm done. This can help quite a bit. So I really do see this helping, but this isn't a clear minions. This is a help clear minions card. And so it has to be a really fast meta with, really low costed minions or token meta, sure, to see play. But I'm say it with me, chat, cautiously optimistic. So,
I just think if you were going to hold it in your hand as an answer to tokens, like to your point about implosion, or if you were going to hold it for stand against darkness, why would you, you don't run this card to hold in hand as an answer to the turn where somebody drops a big scary unleash behind a knife juggler. You do that with Arcane Explosion. You do that with Mage has all of the clear opportunities in the world. You would have so many other ways to do this as Mage in particular. If you need to ping tokens, if you need to play Arcane Missiles, Arcane Explosion, any of the various Mage AoE, I don't know. I don't think it does a very cool specific job very well, but it's not a job that makes sense in Mage. I would play this card in lots of other classes, or heaven forbid if it was a neutral, but I don't know that it makes sense in Mage specifically.
I don't know. I like it. Kevin, tell us about the next card.
Yeah, so the card that broke the collective minds of Hearthstone players everywhere is this next Mage card, Faceless Summoner. This is a 6 mana, 5 attack, 5 health minion, common rarity that reads Battlecry, summon a random 3-cost minion. This is gross. This is probably one of the most bonkers cards we've seen in a long time. If you run through the 3-drops, there's almost no chance you're not getting a huge amount of value out of this. Just without even looking, I know that on average, a 3-drop is going to be a 3/3 minion on average. So you'd be getting 8/8 in stats across 2 bodies for 6 mana, which is above cost. It gets 2 bodies on the board, which means it's not going to be something that you can handle with single target removal, or one big removal spell won't be affected by your polymorph, your deadly shot, all the single target stuff. 5 health is a scary break point, because obviously on 6, there's tons of 6 mana minions that will trade and kill this very efficiently, but it won't touch the 3 mana minion. And 5 dodges.
Well, Sylvanas will steal it, but yeah.
Right. But 5 health dodges almost all of the removal in the game. It dodges every weapon except for Arcanite, Reaper, and Gorehowl. It dodges every single target spell except for Fireball. I'm excluding Flame Lance. It dodges AoE removal of all kinds. It survives Excavated Evil, Flame Strike, Blizzard, take your pick. I think this is going to be... I think this is going to be run in almost every Mage archetype, and I think this is going to be the singular best card in Arena, period, after the expansion drops.
Mage back on top in Arena. I agree.
Like it wasn't already.
So, yeah, it's insane. There are a few cards that when they're released, it's just very easy to go, that's a staple. Faceless Summoner has to be a staple. It just has to. It's just way bonkers. There are ways where it's worse than it being a death rattle, with it being a battle cry, because it is more prone to AoE. Even if most AoEs can't handle it, but in the end, there's no way that you don't play this card in Mage. There's just no way. Even if 1 out of 10 times your opponent clears it with 1 to 2 cards, still, it doesn't matter. And at that point, you probably lost way before that point anyway. JR.
I think the biggest place where this card really shines is if you look at the 3-drops in the game. Like, there's not like a lot of 3-drops that can really screw you over, like there is with Piloted Shredder with 2-drops. I mean, you can get a Flame Waker out of this. You can get Arcane Golem. You can get Injured Blade Master without the Battle Cry effect. You can get King Mukla. I mean, there are a lot of really good 3-drops that you can get from this, and not a lot of 3-drops that are just you get and you're just sad that you got.
I mean,
and
there are
think that's
bad
what really-
3-drops, right? There are
Right.
3-drops where you're going to get low stat lines. Not a lot of them, but there are a handful. What's really scary here is, truthfully, there are no 3-drops with drawbacks. There's not
Right.
a
That's
single
what I'm
3-drop
saying.
you can get that is actually a negative effect on your board presence. There's no Doomsayer. There's no Lorewalker Cho. There's nothing like that. Like, Mounted Raptor can get you a couple of not great 1-drops. Obviously, Shredder, we've seen the it's not a frequent occurrence, but it can be a game-ending drawback where you just, oops, I lose the game by virtue of rolling that 1 out of 84 chance or whatever. That will never happen with Faceless Summoner. You never have that problem.
Yeah,
All right.
and I'm not sure if you'll see it in every Mage deck, but definitely Tempo. It's a very much needed card for Tempo Mage.
Nice. All right, let's talk about, we've got a few more to go through. Let's talk about Demented Frostcaller, JR.
Yeah, so Demented Frostcaller, sorry I don't have it up on the screen right now, is another Mage card for cost, rare minion, 2 attack, 4 health. After you cast a spell, freeze a random enemy character. I'm not terribly excited about this card. It's a Flame Waker style effect without being able to do damage. Freezing minions can be, or your opponent can be really great, but I like to have control over it. And there are better cards right now on which you can use as a mage to freeze minions or freeze your opponent and have control over it. So because of that, I'm not really keen on it. However, one of the nice things they did clarify on this card is that even though it says it's random enemy, it will freeze one that is already not frozen if it can. So I think that's a decent distinction to take from here. Is if you have everything else frozen, then it's gonna grab the non-frozen one. So that's kind of nice that it's doing that instead of just freezing the same guy over and over and over again. What do you think, John?
This is tough. 4 mana to me doesn't make sense because I feel that Flame Waker is strictly better.
Yep.
For 1 less. At the same time, that freeze can be super, super powerful. Whether it's, think of all the times you played Warrior and being able to get, that freeze on a Warrior and now they can't use their War Axe is, huge. Or to freeze up a Druid, things like that. There are a lot of advantages to freeze, and I don't know. I don't feel like this is correctly costed, but at the same time, I can definitely see people trying this out in Tempo Mage, Casino Mage, trying to make it work. I'm worried it's too expensive, especially for the cost. But I also think that, if there are ways to chain together some spells, it can be like super devastating. But it also, it might be a little too easy to clear, especially at turn 4. With Flame Waker, you get them on turn 3. It usually takes at least 2 cards, and you have to be behind on board, to do that, or something like that to get it earlier, or get it out earlier enough. Whereas this one, I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know if I can correctly come to a conclusion on this card. All I know is I feel like it should have cost 3. That's all I'm going to say. I feel like it should have cost 3. Kev.
I like it. I actually think this is super cool. And I think there's a lot of interesting potential because this, unlike if you play Tempo Mage right now, you're pretty favored against a lot of board-driven classes. And Mage is going to have to change a little bit after Old Gods is out. But there's definitely some neat combos, right? You could play Frost Caller into Frost Nova, right? And you would freeze your opponent's hero and all their minions for 7 mana, which is a pretty big deal. You can't really do that right now unless you play like Blizzard and then Ice Lance the hero, which is kind of a huge waste. So there's some interesting synergy potential. I think ultimately this is going to be a card kind of like Forlorn Stalker in a weird way, where we need to see the rest of the set, bottom line, because right now the only new low-cost mage spell we've seen on a strict technicality is Forbidden Flame, which isn't a low-cost mage spell. It's your end-of-turn emergency button. We got Arcane Blast in Grand Tournament. We have lots of other sort of basic low-cost mage spells, Mirror Image, Arcane Missiles, Frostbolt. We just talked about Arcane Explosion. But we're losing a bunch of them, right? Like Tempo Mage right now is super effective because they get things like Unstable Portal or Flame Cannon. And the only new spells we've gotten in recent memory are things like Forgotten Torch. Like, I think something is coming. I think something has to be coming for a low-cost mage spell. If they don't get a new 2-cost spell, something to replace Flame Cannon or Unstable Portal, I think you're going to find there's just not enough low-cost spells. And at 4 mana, you would basically be waiting until turn 6 or 7 right now to get any value out of this. And by that late in the game, putting down a 2/4 minion is really inefficient. It's woefully inefficient. Plus, right now, like, what are you playing in Mage on 4 is the other question. There's so many cards that you can play. Like, that's where your Fireball is. It's
Water
where
Elemental.
your Polymorph is, your Water Elemental. I don't know. I like it. I really like it.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's going to be enough.
Something just
when you have
feels a
to
little
wait.
off. It just feels 90% there, you know?
I've made this complaint about so many cards since we started doing the show over a year ago. I hate the cards where you have to get a big collection of stuff together to pull it off. The reason Druid combo is awesome is because all the other Druid cards are super powerful and it's a 2-card combo. This is going to take more cards than that for less impact later in the game. Ultimately, I think it's
Right.
not going to be efficient enough. And
Right.
freezing your opponent is a stall mechanic, not a win mechanic. So you still don't see any way. Like, you throw this into Mage as a way to sustain Freeze Mage if they lose something like Ice Block or who knows. Like, yeah, maybe it's neat, but I don't know. I think there's going to be better options for Mage when you consider that it's got to be a multi-card combo on turn 6 or later. I think we're going to be able to do better.
I think if I want to freeze cards for, I would just use Frost Nova. It's cheaper, or Blizzard for 2 more and do damage as well.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go through. We got a couple more cards to talk about. Shifting Shade. It's a 4 mana rare priest minion, 4 attack, 3 health, reads Death Rattle. Copy a card from your opponent's deck and add it to your hand. Kevin, I'm going to let you take this one away first. Take us off.
I'm indifferent. I really don't. I mean, 4/3 for 4 is not a crazy good stat line. This is coming in and replacing something like Dark Cultist, which was a 3/4 for 3 and an incredible card, a card that we were massively excited about when it came out and was meta-defining for Priest. It was, for the longest time, one of the only things you could run as a Priest on the 3. This has to slot in where you run your Akanai Soul Priest or a bunch of other cards that I think trade more efficiently, are more significant. There's even a lot of neutral 4-drops that are good in Priest. I don't know. The death rattle of getting a random enemy card, getting to, Thought Steal, half a Thought Steal for a point of mana is neat, but I don't know. I think that it's, unless your goal is to run all the Priest cards that screw with your opponent, mess up the board, steal funny cards, and highlight clip something out of that, I think you can do much better for 4 mana. And I think stealing a random card is not, like, Thought Steal comes and goes when Priest needs an activator for Wild Pyromancer or something. It's not independently a good card. That's how I feel about this. It's probably got specific applications, but fundamentally it's not a good card.
I don't think it's a card that we're going to see. I don't think it's a card that I want to put in my Priest deck. Like, it's not one that I'm going to choose and go, okay, here you go. Where I think this card really shines, though, is it really helps Museum Curator. Now that Dark Cultist is going out, rotating out, I think it's nice that Priest is getting another It's still a decent Death Rattle card that's going to replace Dark Cultist. It has decent stats for the most part, and half the Thought Steal ability. But I'm not sure if it's going to actually see, like, I'm not sure if I'm actually going to choose this card to put into my deck itself. But it definitely helps keep Museum Curator a card that's going to continue to see play. And I think that's where it really helps out with.
Okay. I am going to, I feel again, I feel like I'm saying this a bit this episode. It feels one stat line off. One of the numbers is wrong for what you actually get for it. If it was a 4/4, insta play. Great. But 3 means it trades with some 1 drops, most 2 drops, almost all 3 drops. Yeah, you do get the death rattle of getting a random card, but that just feels really slow because you have to pay to play that card, and you have to hope that you get something decent that you want to play. And so really, that death rattle is a bonus. And I don't know. I don't think the stat line is strong enough on this one.
I think what we're gonna see, right, is we're basically talking about these cards for standard. We're talking about what they're gonna look like once standard drops. In the absence of Piloted Shredder, which was also a 4/3 for 4, the stat line that you want on 4 is probably something like a 3/5 for 4, which is very common. Priest alone has 2 of them, right? In a Piloted Shredder meta, you never ran Holy Champion. In a world with no Shredder, Holy Champion is super scary. Holy Champion is a very, very powerful card. Akanai Soul Priest trades into this and gets to walk away. Like, I just look at all the things that trade with it on 4 and stay alive on the board. You're right. It's just the health line is wrong. Even if you inverted the stats, I think you would see more play out of this if it was a 3/4 instead of a 4/3. Because Priest wants minions that survive. It wants minions with high health. It always has. This is on a 4-drop. Like, how many Priest minions with high attack, low health have ever been run? I think that basically says it.
Yeah, I agree. All right, let's go on. We've got 2 legendaries to talk about before we close out our card review for the week. You know what? I'm feeling generous today. So JR, why don't you go ahead and take this first one?
Yeah,
make you try to pronounce it.
This is Thanks for that. This is the new Hunter legendary minion. It's a 5 mana cost, 6 attack, 5 health. It is a beast named Princess Huron. I don't know how to pronounce that. That's how I'm going to pronounce it.
Huron.
I feel like that was good enough.
Yeah.
Good enough.
But it's got a battle cry. It says trigger a friendly minion's death rattle effect immediately. And oh my god, this is the best legendary card that Hunter is going to have, like, of all time right now. If this card was printed in Goblins vs. Gnomes, it would have been nuts and crazy. Now that some of the death rattle power is rotating now, as we talked about earlier, it's still pretty good though. I see it being played in mid-range Hunter, which I can see in this scenario. Turn 4, I play Twilight Summoner, which we didn't talk about on this show, but Twilight Summoner is a 1/1 for 4 mana that with a death rattle of making a 5/5 guy. So I can see playing Twilight Summoner on turn 4, play this card on turn 5 to copy that, so you get a 5/5 with your 1/1 that's going to give you a 5/5 again later. And then play turn 6 Savannah Highmane, turn 7 play your second Savannah Highmane, turn 8 play Call of Wild. I mean, it's just going to curve out like that. Your turn 4 through 8 is going to be basically done for you for Hunter.
The dream curve. I love that. I love your enthusiasm.
It's going to be a great card for mid-range Hunter, and I think it's going to make... I think this card alone is going to help make mid-range Hunter a very viable meta deck coming in standard.
Okay. Kev, what do you think?
I mean, JR hit a lot of the high notes. One of the things I would add is that the first thing I noticed when I saw this card is this is the first ever 6/5 for 6, or for 5, sorry. 6/5 for 5. Traditionally, 5 drops do not get to go higher attack, right? All of the really powerful classic 5 drops were 5/5s or 5/4s, or you occasionally got something that had a higher stat line but had a drawback, right? You got the 6/6 Ogre Ninja that didn't hit the right target. You got the 7/6 Venturecomb Mercenary that made it so you couldn't play other minions. This is a above curve minion. It's going to trade up. It's the first card ever to do that without a drawback. And I think, JR has been talking a lot about like Death Rattle in general, as we've talked about this over the weeks, and all the Death Rattle cards that might see some comebacks in the absence of all the crazy Death Rattle stuff that's going out in Standard. You could trigger just about anything with this and it would be okay value, right? I mean, if you played it after a high main because you drew it later in the game, if you played it onto, heaven forbid, like a Sylvanas, if a Sylvanas stuck, that would be incredibly scary. But I mean, if you're playing it and all you can hit with it is like a little minion, right? You're stuck playing it onto something silly like, I don't know, a Loot Hoarder or a Harvest Golem. Like, who cares? You get to put down the extra minion, you get the extra effect, and you get it instantaneously. Death Rattle traditionally, like the drawback to Death Rattle is you often don't get to choose when the Death Rattle goes off, or it gets silenced, or it otherwise gets removed when you don't have control over it. Being able to trigger a Death Rattle as a battle cry is crazy. And honestly, this lends a lot of credibility to JR's theory that we're going to see Death Rattle minions yet. Before this set is out, we're going to see new Death Rattle minions, because you don't make Hunter hugely dependent on Death Rattle. That's 2 cards today alone we've talked about that are contingent on Death Rattle for Hunter to work, and then not have Death Rattle be a significant mechanic, and not significant in the sense of Explorer's Hat. Like, we're going to get real Death Rattle somewhere in Hunter other than High Main. I think that's a foregone conclusion at this point.
Yep, I agree. Let's talk about this last one. Kevin, please do the honors.
All right, so Brian Kibler of Brian Kibler Gaming gave us the new version of Deathwing. We now have a second Deathwing. This one is Deathwing Dragonlord. It is a 10 mana 12/12 with a Death Rattle that reads, put all dragons from your hand into the battlefield. I don't like it. I don't like it.
It's my second favorite card that's been revealed.
Of course it is. I mean, maybe this is your secret plan, is you're going to run Dragon Hunter and play Princess Huron onto Deathwing Dragonlord and get to do something ridiculous. I don't know.
That wouldn't help, but yeah, okay.
In terms of what you want from the 10 mana minions in the game, I look at what you can do with the various old gods now. I look at what you could have done with Varian. And we've seen before the ability to get like a big board out of nowhere and how immensely powerful that can be. The fact that it is on a Death Rattle is really cool. But I look at it and think, this is going to be a prime target for a silence, a prime target for a removal. It's going to be the kind of thing that you trade into and then use your AoE removal. Like, everyone's going to know that when you play this card, you've got something behind it, and they're going to play around it. I think that's a foregone conclusion.
You silenced my 12/12. Whatever am I going to do?
I'm of the sincere opinion that at 10 mana, you need a swing turn, right? And we had this exact conversation last week about swing turns. That late in the game, I need to do something that builds a board for myself and removes my opponent's board. The correct play, in my opinion, is the original Deathwing. I would rather play the original Deathwing because it has a way more likely outcome in terms of I actually get to do something useful with it with the removal component. I get control over it. We just talked about the difference between Battlecry and Death Rattle, right? Battlecry, I have control over when it goes off. I want the original Deathwing. I want that big board clear. I want to shut my opponent's win condition down on the board. This is a card that I'm... How far ahead do you have to be to feel good playing this? To just slap a 12/12 down and hope that you don't die, and then your opponent leaves up a 12/12. Well, if they had no way to remove a 12/12, you've already won. If they kill it and you have a handful of stuff that gets pulled out and doesn't get removed, you were already way ahead. Like, in all of the cases where this would be good, you're already winning. That's my... I 10 times out of 10, I'm going to play the original Deathwing.
All right, I'm cutting in here because there is no freaking way that we can keep coming on this show and saying that big bomb minions being played that your opponent can't deal with aren't... or means that you're already way ahead or have already won. I don't think that is true. I really don't. Now, you are right in a couple of things. Number one, 10 mana is expensive. and they need to be in those cards need to be in your hand for a very specific reason, and they're in your deck for a very specific reason. You could argue that dragon decks have some of the best synergy of any decks we've seen. Doesn't mean they've been the best decks, but it does mean that they have had the best synergy in working together. I think Dragon Priest is a token example of a deck where you can run a heck of a lot of dragons, consistent enough to at least get, 2 to 3 dragons to come back out on this. And so while I honestly, I don't think that this card is going to be seeing a lot of play, I think it's purely based on cost. I think it's a really powerful death rattle. Whether they go off, the only time that this really sucks is if you've got to deal with cheap little taunts. You've got one big 12/12 minion and you can't, go face with that. And right now in the game, Kevin, you are correct that we don't see big bombs in the game right now. There's outside of giants, which are, incredibly discounted. Every once in a while, we see Deathwing come into warrior. We don't see those big bombs come out that often, if at all. And so it's really easy to say this is super powerful in an archetype that has already failed and in a slot that no one really runs 10 drops. But I also think it's just as easy to say, in a good dragon deck, there's a lot of things that can go right with this card. Cautiously optimistic. And I know you're probably going to come in and talk about all the battle cries that you lose and things like that, and most of them are.
I mean,
okay, go ahead.
You're right. Lots of dragon cards have battle cries. I was just going to ask you, because we've heard JR say he loves this card already. Would you play this over, and I'm going to get the pronunciation wrong again, Yasharj?
Yasharaj?
Sure. That's not how that's spelled, so that's not how I'm going to pronounce it. Screw it.
So it's Blizzard pronunciation.
I know.
Remind me of what it does again.
It's a 10 mana 10/10 that summons a random minion from your deck into the battlefield at the end of the turn. So you would put down the 10/10, you'd get a random minion pulled from your deck and put on the board. You don't have to wait for a death rattle. You don't have to wait for something to be in your hand. You don't anything. You just get the 2 minions.
I think I would play that. I think I would play Deathwing first. This one.
You think so?
I think so. I know you disagree with me on that, and I promise it's just not me wanting to fall into your trap.
No, it's not a trap. I just legitimately I make the comparison to the other 10 mana turns. Okay, and there's just so many good ones, right? Cthulhu has so many cool synergies that you can build up to, and you don't need to have a bunch of stuff in hand or on the board to make that work. It just works. N'Zoth, right? That brings back all your death rattle minions. Think about that as a crazy swing turn. Yeah, you play a 5/7 for 10, but odds are you're getting way more than 12/12 for stats, and your opponent needs multi-target removal to answer it, not single target removal. Varian might actually be better than this because it's a battle cry. You get the control, you get the card draw. If it does pull anything, you probably get more than 12/12 on the board. I legitimately think this is among the worst 10-drop minions in the game.
As I said, it's my second favorite card. I think it's very viable. It's got a lot of synergy with dragons. If you're playing a dragon deck, you've got a lot of really big dragons in your hand to begin with. You can curve out pretty decently with a dragon deck, mostly with priest or warrior or paladin. They seem to have the most synergy with dragons. And once you start getting into the late game, you might have some really big dragons in your hand. You play them on curve as you can, and then you play this guy down. They have to deal with him as well, and if they do, you might have 1 or 2 other dragons in your hand that you haven't played yet. An obvious one that you might save in your hand, maybe you have Alexstrasza and Ysera. You want to play Alexstrasza to get the battle cry, play your Deathwing next turn. If they kill him, now you get Ysera. And you also get a turn with 10 mana that you get to play something else as well. I think if you play a dragon deck, I think this will be included.
It's worth,
if you decide to play a dragon
experimenting around at least.
Oh, people will experiment with it. I think there's going to be lots of people who try to make it work. I just think once we see the removal options that people have to answer the big minions, because there's so many big minions being introduced, that it's going to be more favorable to play something that swings the board more significantly in your favor, that has more than one body entering play. Those are factors that have always been valuable. They've always been important in the game. I don't think Old Gods is going to change that. I think the battle cry minions are going to be better. The end of turn effects are going to be better because you have way more control over them. This is a card that, if it works, it's probably working in spite of itself. Like it runs contrary to how you want to play. You want to curve out. You want to play your dragons. You want to play minions that benefit from dragons that are not themselves dragons. So you have to have all of these dragons held in your hand to trigger all of your dragon cards. It's really counterintuitive in terms of what you're trying to accomplish during the game. If there's a class that it's going to work with, it's definitely going to be priest. Maybe it pans out, and if that's the case, then awesome, because Dragon Priest deserves to get kind of a shot in the arm. It was such a cool archetype; it deserved to go a lot further than it did. But I'm not holding my breath.
I'm gonna play my Deathwing Dragon Lord / Yogg Saron deck against Kevin and bolster it all and wreck Kevin's face.
Your Deathwing Yogg Saron bolster.
Yes.
Bolster warrior. I love it.
Looking
all right, we gotta go. That concludes our card review. We've got the meta to talk about here. Let's do it.
Beat 'em or join 'em.
Oh no.
Yeah. So the Hearthhead midweek meta review, we requested for the original author to come onto this show and talk to us about it, but he was kind of a jerk. So instead, we've got Kevin to kind of break down this week's Hearthhead midweek meta review.
Yeah, that original author guy, I don't know about him. Unfortunately, just with the way things are right now in the meta, there's not a whole lot new here to talk about. If you've played any Hearthstone at all above about rank 10, you're seeing the same things that everybody else is seeing, which is the decks that are winning and being highly successful are very consistent. There's a lot of Zoo, there's a lot of Druid, there's a lot of Secret Paladin. There are definitely people who are trying to experiment and take advantage of the prevalence of Zoo, so you're seeing more Patron. And you're also seeing, frankly, just a lot of experimentation. People are mega bored. This is the longest content gap in the history of the game. So people are just trying random stuff to see what sticks. But I think the reason you're seeing the things you're seeing has stayed very consistent. Freeze has been pushed out of the meta by Druid. When Freeze is gone, Zoo is the most successful deck because there's nothing that hard counters Zoo other than Freeze. And then basically because Zoo itself is crowding out Druid, that's why you're seeing things like Elise Warrior and Reno Warlock starting to make a comeback, because those are the decks that are benefiting by virtue of Druid being pushed out of the meta by Zoo specifically. So the only thing that's new this week, the only thing that I really was excited about talking about was we're trying to recommend a targeted deck every week. And in this case, we've got two. So the decks that target the top decks and beat them consistently. And this week, the new recommendation is Midrange Paladin. So if you want to win right now against the top decks on the ladder, we had been recommending Aggro Shaman previously, and Aggro Shaman is not actually a deck that is consistent enough to beat these decks in a reliable fashion. But Midrange Paladin trades positive with almost every deck that's popular right now. Generally speaking, it's going to beat the Elise Warrior, it's going to beat the Druid, and it's going to trade 50-50 or better with Zoo, as well as generally mid-range beats Secret Paladin. If Secret Paladin gets the nut draw and curves out flawlessly, it wins against everything. But mid-range on the balance usually actually wins. So I think that's a really cool opportunity if you want to play something that you maybe haven't seen in a while, because mid-range Paladin was super popular back like right around the League of Explorers launch. Just before that, that was what everybody was playing, was mid-range Paladin, and it's back in a big way. What did you guys think? Any surprises? Anything in here you loved, hated?
I like the mid-range Paladin pick. I think that's solid. I think that's good thinking outside the box.
Yeah, I've actually been seeing a lot of mid-range Paladin lately as well, and I think it's because of that, because it does tend to do very well against these other decks. Aggro Druid is just something I don't see, though. Like, I don't even remember the last time I have seen Aggro Druid. I really don't.
I watched Orange wreck rank 6 to rank 3 with it last season when the meta was almost exactly like this. So, I mean, it's really good against those decks, especially against Zoo and Druid. And if you're targeting those decks, you're gonna do a lot. You're gonna win a lot of games.
In theory, right, on the balance, it should beat Druid, Secret Paladin, Warrior, and Zoo. Not Zoo, sorry, Reno. It loses to Zoo, which is why you're not seeing a lot of it. Because in general, Warlock loses or beats Druid, right? Like that's just kind of a known factor. Zoo punishes Druid because Druid doesn't have removal to answer it. So yes, maybe you get a big Fel Reaver down early, but odds are the Zoo player just throws.
Did I say that it beat Zoo? Did I say that? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean that. I meant the Secret Paladin because you out tempo them. Sorry.
Yeah, no,
ignore me. I'm watching chat.
We're on the same page. I don't know. I really like the mid-range Paladin thing. The cool thing about it is that people have learned basically to do the same thing in mid-range Paladin that made Secret Paladin so good, and it was to get rid of the heavy combo dependencies. So you don't see them trying to run every secret under the sun in Secret Paladin. They just run that one secret package. In mid-range Paladin now, they've said, like, no, we don't need multiple Quartermasters. We don't need multiple True Silver Champions. Like, we need to focus on the raw tempo plays. So you play way more stuff in the mid-game. Shredders, Belchers, Keeper of Uldamon, because it's gross. Peacekeepers, mini bots, like all the stuff that's just super powerful in the mid to early game Paladin package. And then that single Quartermaster after Justicar or whatever else is kind of a win condition. Honestly, mid-range Paladin is winning on the board. It's winning just by raw attrition, which is cool because that's not what you expect. You expect it to be a big, like, double Quartermaster I win turn, and that's not how people are playing it.
I got a quick question for you guys, just very quick because I know we need to wrap it up here. Out of these 5 top decks, and when standard hits, which ones do you think are not going to be seen as a top deck anymore? In my opinion, I see 2 of them. I still see 3 others still being up there.
So you think
mid-range Druid's going to be out for
Zoo
nerf reasons?
You're going to say Zoo.
No, I think Secret Paladin is going to be.
Oh yeah, see,
hurting.
That makes sense.
I think Zoo Warlock's still going to be in a very good place in standard.
Losing Avenge is huge.
Yeah,
losing Avenge hurts. I don't know. I mean, I think if people are still playing Reno decks, they're going to be very different because they're going to require some very different things to be competitive. And Warlock in particular is getting such a weird mix of new cards. I think it's going to look different on paper than it does right now because with no Implosion, no Dark Bomb, like right now with what we've seen for Warlock, they lack a lot of removal to survive long enough to make the Reno package right now work. I don't know. So I think at least Warrior in some capacity will still exist because really all it's losing is Deathbite and Shield Maiden, and you can probably see other cards filling those slots, other things that are coming out that are going to do not the same job, but a different job. Zoo in some form will always exist. Like Zoo is always going to be a deck that exists. It's just going to play differently. Zoo, if you remember back in the old school days, back in like early Hearthstone, we used to call it like Ramp Warlock or whatever. And it was just like, it was like play the best thing you could on curve, use all the minions that buff other minions, and you win. So I think most of them will survive other than, you're right, Druid for the nerf reasons and Secret Paladin because of Avenge and some of the other synergies.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead. Let's move on.
We've got mail.
We don't. No mail. Send us your emails to wellmet@blizzpro.com. Try to keep them short. We actually got a couple of really good ones. I couldn't parse them down. I think I did.
Anyway.
Yeah, we ran out of time, but I couldn't parse them down. So if you send me the long one and like in short, that helps a lot.
Send us a TLDR version.
Yes.
Send us a tweet. Email us a tweet.
Yep. There you go. So Patreon stuff. Kev, why don't you go ahead, talk to us about some Patreon stuff while we get out of here?
Sounds good, man. Yeah, so Patreon, we are super excited, as always, that you guys have done so much to support the show. We're looking forward to getting some cool new stuff done in year 2 here, and we're closing in. We're now less than, about 10% of the way left to go, 90% of the way there to our bonus episode goal. So a couple more people who want to contribute to the show and support it, that'll make a huge difference. This week, we do not have any new patrons, but as always, we want to give a special thank you to our friends of the show, Sean G, Martin Z, and Albert T. You guys have made an incredible difference in what we're able to do, all the cool stuff that we're able to put together for the show, including a very special giveaway this week.
Yes, absolutely. iTunes reviews, JR.
Yeah, so we have a handful of iTunes reviews this week. From the USA, we have Raven_728 and Nutcase168. So very close in numbers there. That's kind of cool, I guess. And in Canada, we have TNZ. Thank you so much for those iTunes reviews. If you guys want to give us iTunes reviews as well, you can head over to iTunes, type in Hearthstone, do a little search there for Well Met. It'll pop up. It'll be up there somewhere. Click on that. Click a little star, hopefully 5 if you really like us, and leave a nice little review. It helps us out a ton.
Absolutely. Shout outs really quick. We need to get out of here, but really quick shout outs for the week. Kev, you first.
Yeah, just to everybody who's been helping me out getting set up for this move. I am hoping that if everything goes to plan tomorrow, that my new internet connection will allow me to stream. So everybody who's been asking for that forever, we're very close. We're very close to that being a reality where I could boot something up pretty much every day, hang out with you guys, play some Hearthstone, play some other Blizzard games. So thank you so much for all that. And to the handful of people who took the time to help me get everything in this new condo, I'll post some photos for you guys up on Twitter so you can check it out. It's awesome. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that's great. JR, you.
I'm just gonna give a shout out to everybody that came and joined us in chat today, even though I know a lot of you here for a card back, but thanks for coming and joining anyway. We really appreciate it.
Yep. As for me, I've got a few exciting pieces of news. Number one, I will be guesting on Convert to Raid this Tuesday. And so I will be there. It's 8 p.m. Mountain Time, so 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at twitch.tv/convert to raid. Pat Crane has been like my podcasting idol, to be able to sit across the table from him and be a part of one of his shows is a dream come true. I'd love it if you'd come out and support. I'm also streaming a lot at twitch.tv/kicktripod. So if you want to come hang out, I think we're going to try to do a stream after the show. If you want to come out and do that, we would love it. Hang out and do things. I did my first ever co-stream with Katie, and it was amazing. It was a lot of freaking fun. So you guys should definitely come out and hang out for that. All right. Well, that's it for us this week. You can tune in together with your friends live every Sunday on twitch.tv/BlizzPro at 7 p.m. Pacific, or find us on your favorite podcast outlets. And I guess Google Podcasts is supposed to be launching this week, is what the internets are saying. So, yay. For updates throughout the week, follow us on Twitter at WellMetPodcast. And WellMet is entirely supported by our fans. Find out more at patreon.com/WellMetPodcast. We also have our merch at store.blizzpro.com. Awesome, comfy American Apparel shirts. They're amazing. You should definitely pick one up. And as always, a big thank you to Jake Buttineau at jakebuttineau.ca for our music and site designs for our graphics. Thank you again for joining us for episode 57 of Well Met, and we will see you next time. Bye, guys.
Well Met is a production of BlizzPro.com. The show records live at 7 p.m. Pacific Standard Time at twitch.tv/BlizzPro. To get the latest news and information about the show, follow us on Twitter at Well Met Podcast, or join us on our subreddit at reddit.com/r/WellMetPodcast. If you would like to support the show, you can find out how at patreon.com/WellMetPodcast.
Ruktar!
Oh, God.